exclusive. The Fox report has obtained a draft document from the United States military that for the first time lays out a detailed exit strategy for U.S. and international forces in Afghanistan. A Marine colonel wrote the document and completed it just before the president's decision was announced to send more troops to Afghanistan. Sources tell Fox News senior military and civilian leaders and high-ranking officials from around half a dozen key allies have all seen this document and accepted the 10-page draft. But one source, intimately familiar with this document, says it lays out a strategy that would take 3 to 5 years to complete, and that calls into serious question President Obama's stated plan to at least begin withdrawing U.S. troops in July of 2011 and continuing as conditions allow. The Fox Report's chief correspondent, Jonathan Hunt, got the document and is live in our New York newsroom with what it lays out. Jonathan.
Shep, the document obtained by Fox News is the most detailed exit plan yet produced, and for the very first time lays out exactly how U.S. troops might be able to get out of Afghanistan and leave the country relatively stable and under the control of Afghan army and police forces. But our military sources admit that the theory faces major challenges if it is to become reality. The draft document is formally titled Transfer of Lead Security Responsibility. It was written, according to the front page, by Marine Colonel Matthew Bogdanis, and it lays out a detailed 4-phase process under which control for each of Afghanistan's 398 districts will be handed over to the Afghan army and police. Here's how the exit strategy will work in theory. In Phase 1, the districts will be categorized according to how ready they are for security to be transferred. Those categorized as green and yellow would be the first to be prepared for transfer, while those deemed to be red or grey would be a higher security risk and left for much later. The bottom line will be, according to the draft paper, that, quote, some areas may commence transfer of lead security responsibility immediately, some may require years. Phase 2 will involve building up local government and training the Afghan army and police to take the lead role. That will begin, according to our source, with U.S. trainers living, eating and patrolling with Afghan forces, taking the lead at first, but gradually handing over more responsibility to the Afghans until they reach what General Stanley McChrystal has called the tipping point. Our source acknowledges this is a difficult and crucial phase, saying, quote, you can't turn over the keys to corrupt officials or forces. Fox News military analyst Major General Bob Scales has grave doubts about the ability of Afghan forces to do the job we will need them to do.
The military command in Afghanistan has done an excellent job of laying out what needs to be done. The problem is this dichotomy between a very ambitious plan and a very, very low level of performance on the part of the Afghans. And to bring those two together is going to take an enormous amount of resources, but most importantly, a great deal of time.
In Phase 3 of the plan, a committee made up of district and provincial officials, along with U.S. or other international military commanders, would nominate the district for security transfer. A national committee would approve the nomination, and then lead security transfer would be handed over. But the draft paper warns that this, quote, should not herald an abrupt change. And while it would be a significant achievement, it is, quote, not one to be trumpeted. Our source tells us that to publicly announce transfer of security and a reduction of international forces in any one area, quote, would be an invitation to the bad guys. The final phase, Phase 4, will involve U.S. or other international troops providing support to Afghan forces and local government, while simultaneously moving on to the next district. But our source warns that the entire process would likely be frozen if just one newly transferred district was then attacked by the Taliban. Our source also tells us that in a best-case scenario, this exit strategy represents, quote, a 3 to 5 year plan. It cannot be done responsibly before that. Asked if that means the Obama administration will not be able to fulfill its promise to begin troop withdrawals in July 2011, our source said, quote, it can't be done except with smoke and mirrors.